Proposition 267. String theory can offer some beautiful math to help express tiny vibrations of energy, not point strings, as the framers of our standard model of particle physics, but its attempt to loop in gravity and add hidden dimensions that only exist in formula and pass it off as reality is when string theory jumped the shark. A rare instance where a failure at one goal, explaining the strong nuclear force, morphed into something completely different, yet still valuable. Pretty math. But the concept of point strings are frayed at both ends, and there is nothing super about their symmetry. Proposition 268. There are no point strings, just as there are no point particles. It was solely a convenience to assume there is an elementary structure to our universe, instead of embracing what relativity has been screaming to us for over a century. We can see and measure what is relative to us, so there are predicted limits to how small or how far away we will ever be able to see. Proposition 269. A common limitation of the human mind is having a hard time grasping that nothing comes from nothing and everything comes from something. Sounds overly simplistic until you try to grasp there can be no true smallest units of time, space, energy, mass, gravitational attraction, magnetic attraction, and thus also heat and luminosity. Beyond the realms that are relative to us exist scale factors far larger and far smaller than the mind is willing to wrap itself around. Proposition 270. It is not the fact that there is evidence for subquantum mass that points towards infinite regression. It's a concept that we understand already in multiverse dynamics about non-zero statistics across infinite iterations of nested successive pockets of relative spacetime. There is a non-zero chance for the same density of mass and density of energy across the same density of space and density of time to again manifest the natural properties needed to see a fine structure constant at some higher scale factor, so it must happen eventually. Proposition 271. If it becomes statistically impossible for there not to be a larger universe and a larger periodic table beyond us, then it immediately becomes statistically impossible for there not to be an infinite regression of smaller and larger periodic tables and an infinite number of scale factors. I truly cannot stress enough how firmly I believe that the only true paradox-free explanation for existence and reality is an eternally infinite and infinitely eternal universe with no smallest or largest scale factors. Mind-boggling? Yes. Paradox-free? Yes. Really? Yes. Proposition 272. If the true structure of the universe was an infinite number of separate nested pockets of relative pressurized spacetime, mass energy, heat radiation, nested co-moving frames of reference, that would predict there must be other instances of the same relative energy density and relative mass density across relative spacetime occurring at an infinite number of different scale factors. Take the idea of eternal monkeys playing with keyboards, crafting Shakespeare, and apply the concept to how larger and larger co-moving frames of reference will always appear differently based on which hierarchical parent frame of reference they are observed from. Zoom out far enough, and a fine structure constant is predicted to repeat. Proposition 273. Just as Neo can break out of the matrix to see the underlying reality, those who embrace infinite regression and grasp how it is truly the only paradox-free explanation for existence can finally marvel at the true wonder of the universe around us without filters or shades. When someone accepts eternal time and infinite space as undeniable, self-evident truths, then instead of feeling helpless, hopeless, insignificant, and lost, you should feel empowered by the knowledge that no prayer or divine intervention is going to alter our future. Only our decisions and actions can do that. Proposition 274. Statistical probabilities point towards infinite regression, nested successions of co-moving frames of reference, intersecting pockets of superluminal spacetime, eternal time, infinite space, eternal evolution, and an infinite number of iterations of a finite number of different species living on a finite number of different big wet rocks as the true natural state of nature. Proposition 275. The ability to provide the sole paradox-free explanation for reality, while seeing the implications of that premise solving so many of the current most pressing mysteries of science, alongside the simple elegance of its explanation, would again have William of Ockham smiling on the concepts of infinite regression, successive collision theory, nested pockets of spacetime, the subquantum realm, the sub-subquantum realm, eternal evolution, and the dissipating tensor mesh strength of gravitational attraction across a nested succession of parent co-moving frames of reference. Proposition 276. There is no smallest measurement of time. There is no smallest measurement of space. There is no smallest measurement of energy. There is no smallest measurement of mass. There is no smallest measurement of heat. There is no smallest measurement of luminosity. We have smallest relative measurements dictated by the laws of physics. Proposition 277. There is no largest measurement of time. There is no largest measurement of space. There is no largest measurement of energy. There is no largest measurement of mass. There is no largest measurement of heat. There is no largest measurement of luminosity. We have largest relative measurements dictated by the laws of physics. Proposition 278. Our largest measurable pocket of spacetime is likely in some type of orbit, or part of something larger that is in orbit. Our largest measurable co-moving frame of reference may be orbited by one or more satellite sibling universes. Our largest measurable visible horizon and the co-moving portions created during the same sequence of events that are beyond the parts we can see may be on a collision course someday with some other pocket of spacetime. Proposition 279. The intersecting pockets that forged our visible universe unlikely saw a tiny overlap in their paths where there were just enough initial collisions to create the universe we see. It is far more likely there was a larger portion of overlap where the pockets intersected and many other pockets of spacetime besides ours were forged. Over time, as the gravitational instructions between them all get to talk, new successions of nested pockets of spacetime will form. But the entire leftover spawn itself would still be hurling through space and likely orbiting something else. Proposition 280. The two pockets that collided probably saw 90 to 95% of their objects completely miss each other as the pockets slid through shared spacetime together while they nonchalantly continued along their merry way. The relative starting velocity of the two colliding pockets and the leftover momentum of the pockets that were created would determine if the source pockets move away too quickly or whether the succession of nested pockets created ends up trailing or orbiting one of the original source pockets. Proposition 281. Our visible universe is in orbit inside a co-moving frame of reference, in orbit inside a co-moving frame of reference, in orbit inside a larger and larger succession of co-moving frames of reference. I predict it is unknowable for any species to ever be able to gauge how many of their parent pockets of space were also created during the same set of collisions that spawned themselves. Our grandparent and great-grandparent frames of reference may have been created with us. So besides our siblings sharing the same co-moving frames of reference as our visible universe, we also likely have many cousins also spawned from the same succession of superluminal collisions that created our visible section of it. Proposition 282. There was no first second, nor will there be a last year. There is no first light second, nor will there be a last light year. There was no first force or first energy, nor will there be last energy. There was no first matter or object, nor will there be a last particle. There was no first collision, nor will there be a last collision.